If you've been on the internet at all in the past 2 weeks, you've probably heard of a game called Silksong. Silksong has been in development for the past 7 years, and now its release date is just around the corner. However, before I can move on from its predecessor Hollow Knight, I still have some unfinished business. Within Hollow Knight, there's a separate unlockable area called the God Home, where you can battle any of the bosses in the game on 3 separate levels of difficulty. Attuned difficulty is exactly the same as they appeared in the game. Ascended gives the boss a different arena, more health, and double damage. And for Radiant difficulty, if you get hit even once, you lose the fight. So in this video, I'll be attempting to beat all the bosses in Hollow Knight on Radiant difficulty before Silksong is released. At least, that was the plan. Look, we all have computers with functioning calendars on them, we all know what date it is, so now you're probably asking, hey Crump, why'd you say you'd beat the bosses before Silksong releases? It's already out. And rest assured, I have a perfectly reasonable explanation, and that is, I do not have time management skills. Following Team Cherry's announcement, I wanted to do some kind of final send-off to my favorite true single-player game of all time. I had already beaten all but 15 of the bosses in the game on Radiant, so I thought that trying to round out that list would serve as the perfect end to my time playing this game. And so it was. On August 29th, I began trying to Radiant the remaining bosses in the game with the resolution that regardless of whether or not I actually do it, I would publish this video on September 3rd, 8 PM EST. Win or lose, no matter the outcome, my plan was to release this video before Silksong came out. So again, just to reiterate, my master plan was to write, record, edit, and publish a 30+ minute long YouTube video in the span of 6 days. Yeah, that went just about as well as you'd expect. Day 1 started, so I was beating bosses so I couldn't edit, and then the next day I was beating bosses so I couldn't edit, and then the next day I wasn't really beating any bosses because I had to do some yard work so I couldn't edit, and then the next day I was beating bosses so I couldn't edit, and then the next day I was beating specifically the Radiants so I couldn't edit, and then the next day Silksong came out so I couldn't edit, and then I had to beat the main ending of Silksong so I couldn't edit, and then I have to beat the true ending of Silksong so I couldn't edit, and then I got 96% on my save file so I couldn't edit, and then the Rocket League World Championships happened so I couldn't edit, and mind you, I'm still in college studying for my bachelor's degree, so I couldn't edit. And now we're here. Yeah, this was probably the biggest waste of time in my entire life. Before we start, I should give a bit of additional context. I've already played through all of Hollow Knight and gotten 112% on my current save file. I've beaten Pantheon 5 and gotten 4 of the 5 possible endings, and I've also made a surprisingly controversial Hollow Knight bosses tier list. Taking all that into account, I'd say I'm pretty good at Hollow Knight. But I didn't exactly come into this game with no experience. The platforming, movement, and combat came naturally because I play a little game called Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. My experience playing Ultimate has helped me out a lot when I beat the main game, but in this case, it might be to my detriment. One thing that I forgot to mention is that I'm a K. Rool main. King K. Rool is a heavyweight with strong laggy attacks, decent zoning tools, and his own unique mechanic, belly armor. On certain moves, his golden belly acts as armor. Any attack that lands on him through that armor deals a largely reduced amount of damage and has 0 knockback. There are some cases where the armor breaks, but for the most part, this allows K. Rool to muscle through any attack that lands on him and hit back harder. So for the past 7 years, I've been playing this reptilian pirate, and all the while using an aggressive, trading-heavy game plan. When they go for a big move, I don't run or dodge, I stand there, take the hit, and hit back harder. So let's try that strategy out against one of the Radiant mode bosses! Are you starting to see the problem here? If I get hit once, I die. I'm dead. I'm f***ing gone. And all my time playing Smash was spent conditioning myself to walk directly into the massive death beam of doom. So if I want to beat all these bosses hitless, I need to break those habits. Going into each boss, I'll be detailing my strategy, charm loadout, and general advice for the bosses in case you were looking for help in this topic as well. Let's look at the bosses we still need to beat. A lot of them are considered some of the hardest bosses in the game, but there are a few additions that aren't quite on the same levels as the others. Grim and Paintmaster Shio are probably the least difficult in this group. Both of their attack patterns are pretty telegraphed, so beating them shouldn't be too difficult. The Watcher Knights and Oroon Mado are only tough because of their numbers, Sentinel Hornet, Lost Kin, and Nail Sage Sly are the last of the small bosses left to defeat hitless, and all three of them could cause some trouble. They have pretty obvious counterplay, but that counterplay involves keeping your distance, playing safer, and everything that I've conditioned myself not to do. Winged Nosk, Zero, and Markoth are only difficult in how awkward their fights are. Nosk's wing hitboxes are always just a tiny bit higher than you expect, and as for Zero and Markoth, their fights are just bullet hells. And finally, we have the big three: NKG, Pure Vessel, and Absolute Radiance. The conventionally hardest bosses in the game, and aside from Markoth, probably the ones that will take the most time. My standard charm loadout is Quick Slash, Mark of Pride, Strength, and Unbreakable Heart. However, since Heart wasn't really gonna do anything against Radiant mode bosses, I swapped it out for Spell Twister. So whenever I say the standard loadout, this is what I mean. And once day one began, I headed down and made a beeline for Lost Kin. Lost Kin's attacks are pretty telegraphed, but if you're not paying attention, they can catch you off guard. There's also some added difficulty in how small its hitbox is and how quickly it can alternate between attacks when it's on low health. With all of that in mind, I knew this fight wouldn't be easy. Lost Kin was the first truly difficult boss I beat in the main game. Killing it the first time took me almost an hour, and even then I'd barely gotten through it. Yes! Come on! Let's go! Now, I had to do it without getting hit a single time. But with more experience, better gear, and a newfound determination, I was ready for one of the hardest battles of my life. Oh, it's dead. I killed it. Yeah, this one's a lot easier than I was making it out to be. I ended up beating it on my 6th try, and I was limit testing that run and I kinda just got lucky. But rest assured, I did do some more experimenting and found more consistent ways to beat it. I used the standard charm loadout of Quick Slash, MOP, Strength, and Spell Twister. The main thing to do here is to stay grounded and keep about 2 nail lengths of distance between you. You should never really need to jump more than half your max jump height at any point in this fight. After I finished up with Lost Kin, I decided to move on to Soul Tyrant. I used the standard loadout here as well, and my main strategy was just to run after him and hit him a lot. I wish I was joking, but that's all you gotta do. Aggression is your friend. Go after him and hit him as hard and as fast as you can. Soul Tyrant's main attacks consist of him teleporting and shooting fireballs, running across the floor, creating a moving carousel of fireballs, and doing his own desolate dive. For the fireballs, Deadass just dash towards him. The fireballs are heat-seeking, but if you just walk towards him, they end up hitting the ground. For his floor run, you could easily jump and pogo when he goes by. And when it comes to the spinning carousel, stay directly in the middle of the arena. Hit him as he passes overhead, then go back to the center and stand still. When you see him about to dive overhead, you dash forwards, full jump, and then dash backwards. Doing this not only lets you avoid the initial slam and the shockwave, but it also preempts his potential fake out and second slam. So if he does do a pump fake, you have more than enough time to react with your double jump. For his second phase, the initial slams are a bit tricky to avoid, but what I've done is a short hop into a dash in alternating directions. Once he reappears and sends fireballs out, just run up to him and whack him. But it's important to prioritize safety over damage. You can always get in more hits later in the fight, but he only needs 1. 2 down, 13 to go. After a quick detour to beat some of the older bosses on Radiant, I decided it was better to rip the band-aid off now, so I made my way to Winged Nosk. Now, for those of you who haven't seen my Hollow Knight bosses tier list, which you should definitely watch by the way, there's one thing you should know. I hate Winged Nosk! Everything about it is shit. I don't know what else to say. The wing hitboxes are janky as hell, the balloons are completely unnecessary, this shit's just undodgeable sometimes. Hell, half the fight it doesn't even stay on the fucking screen! There is no limit to my hate. There is no fucking descriptor that can capture what depths I would go to see this dumpster fire of a boss removed from the game. I am the Kendrick Lamar. Editing Crump here. I went on about this for another 5 minutes, and I don't think that's worth any of your time, so I did us all a favor and cut it out. But just know, I hate this thing. A lot. Winged Nosk is tricky because of how unorthodox its movements are. The jank and jaunts make it hard for me to pin down, but if there's one tangible benefit to my hatred of Winged Nosk, it's that now I know everything about it. Its health, its attack patterns, the noises it makes for each attack, its home address, credit card, social security number, whatever there is to know about this worthless, hapless little shit. I know it all, so I know how to beat it. Standard loadout, no changes. As soon as the fight starts, dash underneath it and start hitting it. It'll float towards the center and give you more chances to swing. Once it leaves, there are 3 things it could do. 1, it could lunge, in which case you have to full jump to pogo. Anything less than a full jump will have you dying to the dumb fucking wing hitboxes on the top. 2, it could summon balloons, in which case you drop everything and kill them on sight. Remember, it always spawns 2. If it does the streak and you only see 1, prepare to die, because sometimes it decides to just delay one of the spawns. You know, just for kicks, just for fun. And when it does spawn, there's no accompanying shriek, it just pops up. So if you're not ready for that, you are going to lose. And 3, it can spew infection, either from itself or from the ceiling once it's below half health, in which case you close your eyes and pray it doesn't hit you. Or you can dodge, it's also a pretty decent option. During the fight, try to position within the center third. Keep your eye on it and listen for its screams. It makes a different noise for every attack, so if you lose sight of it, you can still figure out what it'll do next. Don't overchase, don't panic, and don't move unless you have to. Do all of that, and you can finally be rid of this pathetic fucking excuse for a boss. I hate this little rat so much! To close out the day, I decided to tackle Hornet. Hornet is very similar to Lost Kin, but she has some different attacks and telegraphs a little bit less. She also has 4 main attacks, what I'm calling Shaw, Haw, Egale, and Adino. If you refer to them differently, that's perfectly fine, but that's what I'm calling them. She also does a thing where she leaves little spike balls in the surrounding area or something, I don't know. Going into this, I expected this fight to be relatively easy, but for some reason, it was a lot trickier than I thought. Something about the cadence and timing of the attacks threw me for a loop. Every time I'd try to run, I'd be just a little bit too slow. Every time I think she's going for a Haw, she does an Egale. I started looking for ways to beat her. Should I play safer? Should I use different charms? Do I need to practice more on Ascended mode, or can I just keep going like this? I mean, I'm getting closer, but it still seems really far away. And while I was contemplating all of these options, I realized something. A crucial detail that I missed that could potentially save me hours of future attempts. Something so obvious that I didn't know how I missed it. Something that I should have been doing the whole time. Wait, why am I not overcharming right now? Overcharming in Hollow Knight is equipping extra charms past the normal limitations of charm notches. The normal downside is that you would take double damage from any and all incoming attacks. But in Radiant mode, everything one-shots you. All obstacles deal essentially infinity damage. The downside to overcharming is that you take double damage, but 2 times infinity is still just infinity. It literally can't get any worse. So there's literally no downside to overcharming. As such, standard loadout has now changed. Out with Spell Twister and in with Sprint Master and Shaman Stone. With this newfound charm loadout, I continued trying to beat Hornet, and after about 25 minutes, I ended up winning. The main piece of advice I can give to you for this fight is to be a coward. Run like baby, run like small child, it's fine, because that's how you win. You still want to stay close so you can poke every once in a while, but safety first is the way to go. Anyways, with Hornet done, I decided that 4 was enough for the day, so I wrapped it up and saved the rest for day 2. For day 2, I started off with a quick Pantheon 5 run as a warm-up. I ended up losing to Pure Vessel, but along the way, I beat Zero Hitless and NKG while only taking a single hit. I'll settle for 1 hit. I got hit once. I can do Radiant on NKG 100%, 1000%. After that, I headed back down to the vault. The main plan was to knock out all the Nail Masters. The main plan was to knock out all the Nail Masters. That is, Oro and Motto, Nail Sage Sly, and first on the list, Paint Master Shio. His fight was fairly simple, but it had an interesting mechanic. If you look closely, his paintbrush changes color for each of his attacks. Blue is a straight swing with 3 projectiles, red is a slam, yellow is a full stage jab, and pink is a great slash. His fight as a whole teaches something very important for all aspects of this game, and that is to never look at the knight itself. The more you look at the knight, the less you see of your opponent and the less time you have to react to their attacks. By this point in the game, if you haven't already, you should work on always knowing where the knight is on screen without looking at them. For Shio, I used the standard loadout and basically just played safe the whole time. For Blue, I stayed 2 MLP nail lengths away until he swung, then I ran in and got some hits. For Red, I just dodged and hit him where he landed. The majority of times I didn't even consider going for damage when he used yellow or pink since the risk wasn't worth it. And after a few minutes, he went down. Hey, we did it. Woo! Next, I set my sights on Oro and Motto. Fighting Oro alone was easy enough, but fighting both of them at once would be tricky. One of the things I'm the worst at is fighting multiple enemies at once. For this fight, I knew that my victory would hinge on my spell usage. If I could hit both of them with the same Shade Soul or D-Dark, then this fight would get much easier. I stuck with the standard loadout and started putting in attempts. During the solo Oro section, I didn't use any spells, which let me conserve soul for the second half. Once that started, I began how do I describe this? Fighting like a cat. And I don't mean anything weird by that, I mean fighting like an actual cat. Whenever they move in, I swipe and retreat. Whenever they jump, I dash under. Whenever they surround me, I use a D-Dark. Swipe and retreat, rinse and repeat, over and over and over again. I just kept on giving parting shots and using spells until both of them went down. Okay! There we go! At this point, I had beaten 2 bosses hitless within 15 minutes, so I decided to take a detour from the pre-planned schedule. Instead of going to Sly, I headed over to Zero. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, his fight is literally just a dodging simulator. It barely took me 10 minutes, it's not even worth a recap. 3 bosses down in 25 minutes. I was on a roll. I was dodging well, I was using my spells correctly, I was finding the right openings, and I was also getting a little bit lucky. It would be a waste to go after Sly when I'm this on point. While I'm in the groove, I should fight one of the tougher bosses. And after a few seconds of thinking, I made up my mind. I think today, I want to start on the endeavor that is Markoth. Because if I can get him out of the way now, sky's the limit. Markoth is probably one of the most hated bosses in the entire community. His movement, the shields, the platforming elements of his fight, and the spears he throws around force players into an over-defensive playstyle, and his Ascended Arena only makes that worse. Those who have gotten Radiant on all bosses frequently cite Markoth as one of the most challenging bosses to Radiant. It would be a fight unlike any other I had done in my entire time playing this game, and it would confine me to the playstyle that I hated the most. But I knew that if I got it out of the way now, the sky was the limit. And so, I began the endeavor. I quickly figured out a few things. Namely, this fight is annoying. All of the projectiles, the spear, and Markoth himself moving around was giving my brain too many things to process while looking for avenues of attack. And this was leading to some questionable decisions. No! I thought I had the right spot! No! I did find a few tricks to help me play safer, like C-dash stalling on the side wall when Markoth's shields spin, but none of my findings were leading to staggering progress. It was all just slow, marginal improvement. It wasn't until 40 minutes in where I had started to consider changing my charm loadout. I mean, I wasn't exactly using Quick Slash, so I didn't need it. But what should I replace it with? Should I use Grubberflies, as so many others did before me? Do I even need Sprint Master, or could I replace it with Nailmaster's Glory? Should I go all in on the spellcasting and use Soul Eater and Spell Twister? But then it hit me. A new option that I hadn't considered before. I've been complaining about needing to play defensive, but it's not like I'm bad at that, it's a psychological issue. I associate playing well with dealing damage, and I can't deal damage if I'm always running away. That's why I hate playing defensive. It makes me feel like I'm doing nothing, and that's unsatisfying. So what if there were a way to deal damage passively? What if there was a charm that could still land hits even if I was doing nothing? What if... What if... Yes, my answer for Markoth is Grimchild. Grimchild is obtained in the Grim Troop DLC by completing the entire DLC without banishing the troop. As a charm, it cannot be damaged, consumes no soul, and each of its attacks deals 11 damage. That's about 1/3 of the damage from a fully upgraded nail with strength equipped. As long as I kept on dodging, I theoretically wouldn't have to land a single hit. After another 30 minutes of attempts and a little more workshopping, I landed on my final charm loadout. Strength, Mark of Pride, Shaman Stone, Spell Twister, and Grimchild. Once I had that, I kept pouring attempts in, trying to find any exploitable behaviors or unnoticed weakness, and I had a decent amount of success. I discovered that the best way to open the battle was to start a pogo. I also realized that conserving soul through the first half of the fight is essential, but all of these discoveries and findings are footnotes compared to my largest takeaway. By far, my most important piece of advice for fighting Markoth at any difficulty is to remember that you have dash slash. Oh, that's an option, right. Dash Slash deals about double the damage of a normal hit, but it has massively increased range. So much so that you can hit Markoth while being completely out of range of his shields. Even with all these findings, it still took me a while to get the right run. Every time I made a single mistake, I was sent back to Godhome. But after an hour of 47 minutes total of attempts, I finally beat Markoth on Radiant. Yes! Oh my god! Let's go! Once I finished up with Markoth, I headed over to deal with Sly, and to everyone who still has yet to beat him, just use Grubberfly's Elegy, it makes it so much easier. Its main effect is sending out an air slash whenever you swing your nail. Each of these air slashes are able to push Sly back and deal half the normal nail damage, and these blades all travel the same length regardless of other charms, which means you don't really need Mark of Pride for this fight. For those of you who don't have Grubberfly's Elegy, a good substitute is Sharp Shadow. It lengthens the distance traveled by your Shade Cloak and deals damage to all enemies it passes through. I tested both methods and found more success with Grubberfly's, and in the end, that charm was what won me the fight. Seriously? Okay, there we go. Finally. And with 5 bosses completed on the day, I set my controller down and saved the rest for tomorrow. Except for Grim. I went back at like midnight and beat Troopmaster Grim in about 5 minutes. He was pretty easy to beat and most of his attacks are the same as NKG but slower, so I'll cover him with NKG. Alright, that's it. Okay, day 3 was weird. I had to help out with some yard work stuff, so I only got around to playing at like 11 PM and I only played for, let me see here, 45 minutes and 32 seconds. Going into day 3, I had 5 bosses left. Water Knights, White Defender, NKG, Pure Vessel, and Absolute Radiance. I had expected these 5 bosses to be the toughest ones aside from Markoth, so I was saving them for later, but on day 3 I kinda just... I beat 4 of the hardest bosses in the game hitless within 50 minutes! I think I fluked most of them, but I'll try my best to recap. For the Watcher Knights, I basically did exactly what I did for Oro and Motto. Standard layout, try to conserve soul through the first, maximize spell damage, and fight like a cat. I just tore through it, and 8 minutes later I was on to White Defender, and for him, I just played the fundies. I maintained good spacing, kept my eyes on him, recognized his attacks before he did them, everything! I didn't even need to do the cheese strat of juggling him while he's in a ball, I just won! It took me 4 attempts, I don't know what happened, but I went on to NKG! And here's where I actually took some time. Whereas the first 2 took a combined 11 minutes to beat, I took about double that time for NKG. NKG is one of my favorite bosses in the game. His attacks are fun and tough to dodge, he's very fair in his difficulty, and his OST is top tier. I had already beaten him on Attuned and Ascended a few times, and I knew how to handle each of his attacks. I entered with the standard layout and just focused on counterpunching. NKG has a few distinct attacks, many of which he shares with his weaker counterpart, so here's how to deal with them. For his grounded lunge, basically just back up a few paces and stand still. For the ranged attack, wait a moment, then jump and dash through the center opening. If you're fast enough, you can land a few hits before he disappears. When he goes for the double lunge from the air, immediately dash away from the first lunge, then keep on walking forward. And if you time it correctly, you can jump and pogo him twice after his second lunge. For the quadruple fire spawn, dodge the first 3 however you like while staying within dashing distance of the main body. Then, when the 4th one is queued to spawn, dash underneath him and hit him with an Abyss Shriek. And as for the ground spikes and pufferfish move, dodge. Just dodge. In general, you don't want to be at the very edge of the map unless it is his pufferfish attack. Just stay in the center and try to recognize his attacks before he does them, and eventually you'll beat him too. Now, I had just beaten Watcher Knights, White Defender, and NKG in the span of about 33 minutes. So what's my next move? Obviously go for Pure Vessel. Pure Vessel is widely considered the 2nd hardest boss in the game, and I'd agree with that statement. It has a lot of really tricky attacks to deal with, and they all flow in and out of each other without any breaks. It's constant, non-stop, close quarters combat. No breaks, no mistakes, for 2 minutes. I expected this to take me hours, if not an entire day to beat. So, how long did it take? 12 fucking minutes. Constant, non-stop close quarters combat, that's how I described it. That's all fighting stuff, that's all aggression stuff. I love aggression! I went standard loadout and I just played aggressive. No holds barred, just kept wailing on him. It has 5 main attacks, not including its parry, and 6 past half health. For the triple slash, you can either Shade Cloak through it or pogo off the top of its head, but both need to be timed and spaced perfectly. For the lunge, the same holds true, but it's more worthwhile to pogo. Shade Cloak is better for the slashes than pogoing is, so it's best to pogo the lunge to conserve the Shade Cloak. For the soul daggers, what I usually do is jump and Shade Cloak. I don't know why I jump, but I do. You can also just dodge them normally, but I don't feel like doing that. For the soul pillars, focus, and void tendrils, you can either dodge them as normal or use a D-Dark to bypass them. Stay close, play aggressive, and find what openings you can in between its attacks, and eventually, it'll go down. And now, all that's left is the Radiance. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, this was the worst day of the entire challenge. It started off well enough with me beating Ascended difficulty for the first time with the Radiance, after a full hour of trying. Oh boy. I began putting attempts into Radiant difficulty and I was making some minor progress, but I kept on getting stuck on that second phase. Over and over again, dying to the spears, then dying to the lasers, then missing a platform, then dying to the orbs. I was getting better at that first phase, at least I thought I was, but the second phase always spelled the doom of my run. It went on like this for a long time, but soon enough, I found a golden opportunity. No! Okay! Whew. Okay, I got there. And I squandered it. I had it right there and I couldn't deliver. Still, getting there was a big deal. I proved to myself that it's possible, I just needed another chance. And a bit later, I got that chance. No! Ooh. And the same thing happened. I took a short break to do some research on how others beat Absolute Radiance hitless. Some players sped through the second phase while others took it slow. Some players practiced by doing hitless runs unattuned before trying to go to Radiant. You can poga the Radiance during the last phase. The world record uses Grimchild. I tried to learn as much as I could and then I got back to trying to beat it. 1 hour passed, then 2 hours. It was 3 hours later when I next reached the final phase. Oh my god. Okay. And the same thing happened. I was making it to that second phase more often, but whenever I could get past it, I'd freeze up. I was getting nervous. I didn't know what to do or how to fix it, so I tried everything I could think of. Going back to standard charms, staying more grounded, turning the music off, but everything I tried was never enough to drown out the sound of my heart in my ears. That session went on for another 2 hours until I realized how counterproductive this whole process was, so I set my controller down for a while and decided to return later that night. When I sat down for the last session of the day, I was tired, mentally drained. I was operating fully on autopilot. I had no more energy to focus, no more strength to get mad. I just played mindlessly, and for some reason, I was playing better. I was more consistent and measured, and it turns out that was part of the solution. About 15 minutes in, I made it back to that final phase, but again ended up falling short. I was disappointed, of course, but more than that, I was surprised that I even managed to do that. That's when I realized I'm more than capable of beating the boss. It's just the nerves. Through that attempt, I was relaxed, laid back, fully slouched in my chair, not a care in the world, until I heard that high-pitched ringing and my mind got pulled back to reality. If I could stay calm, then I could win. I made the climb one more time that night, but I couldn't close it out. But more importantly, I was making it up to that second phase way more consistently. Regardless, I closed shop a little while later and saved the rest for day 5. I had one boss left to beat. The hardest boss, but nonetheless, just one boss. I'd gotten close 4 times, but I couldn't win. I got nervous every time I made marginal progress through the fight, and I almost always died right after. And this process was on loop for 10 hours. 10 hours I spent trying to beat Absolute Radiance hitless, and no luck. And after that time, I doubted if I ever could. Going into day 5, there was more pressure on me than ever. Due to certain IRL complications, I knew for a 100% fact that this would be the last day to try and beat Absolute Radiance, and I knew I had to do it fast. I decided to address my problems with the last section first, and began doing run-throughs of Abstrad on attuned difficulty just to familiarize myself with the ending. And after doing that for a little while, I went back to Radiant. Through day 4's struggles, I'd learned a few things. First, I needed to stay grounded and minimize movement. More often than not, I would be the instrument of my own demise, walking into attacks that otherwise would have missed. It also helped keep my nerves in check to have less things to focus on. And on that point, every time I got past phase 1 and lost, I would take a minute after the attempt just to breathe, slow down my heart rate, and recenter my mentality. These adjustments proved to be the right call, and I was improving on my previous standards. About an hour into the session, I got another chance to end the run, but again, the nerves got to me and I panicked. After calming myself down a bit, I spent more time practicing on attuned and went right back to Radiance. And shortly thereafter came my closest attempt yet. What? This time, it wasn't the pressure that got to me, it was a lack of knowledge. I misjudged the invulnerability given to me by D-Dark, and I lost because of it. Nevertheless, I kept pushing onward. I had another close attempt later on, making it to the top of the climb, but dying just before that final phase. Nearly 13 hours of trying and still no success. Real life wasn't going to wait for me to be done with this. I still had responsibilities, so I made a deal with myself then and there. One more hour of trying, and if I didn't get it by then, I'd give up. Remember what I said at the start, win or lose. I always knew that losing was an option, and to be honest, I was actually expecting it. But I wasn't ready to accept it. Not yet. I tried to stay calm. I tried to keep my cool and keep my emotions in check, but what burst through wasn't fear or nerves, it was anger. Are you fucking kidding me? I had the damn thing pointed straight up, and the game says, no, let's get to the right. I was feeling bogged down by the false sense of pressure I put on myself during this whole challenge, so I decided that instead of bottling it up, I'd let it out. I had hoped that expressing and releasing that rage would help me focus more on the task at hand, and surprisingly, it was actually working. With 37 minutes left, I made it back to that final phase, but again, I slipped up. And only 12 minutes later, I made it back again, but slipped up again. Oh my god, no! Two fantastic runs, very close together. I was right there, and I knew I only needed a little bit longer. But with time ticking down in the hour and only growing less, the anger that had kept me going turned to despair. I wasn't going to win. I still had time, but mentally, I was checked out. I was done. While the clock slowly went down, I began to wonder what went wrong. Was it my mentality? Was it the way that I practiced? Was it a mix of the two, or was it entirely separate? I'd gone through every combination of charms that I thought would work, but maybe there was something else I wasn't seeing. Some other option that could have given me the safety I needed to beat the Radiants. I don't know. But part of it most definitely lies in how this boss was designed. It was made to give people that feeling of nervousness. The first section of the fight to let the player know exactly what they're getting into. The middle, where the ground fades away as you ascend to the final peak. And then, the climb to the top. The radiance vanishes, and a set of platforms appear, beckoning you higher. And as you rise further away from the ground you were once confined to, the epic music fades away, replaced only by the gleam of the sun and the sound of your heart pounding. 13 hours, 34 minutes, and 17 seconds. Hundreds of attempts, with 9 passing Phase 2, 6 scaling the Ascent, and finally, 1 victory. All 44 bosses in Hollow Knight's Godhome, completed on Radiance difficulty. Thanks for watching. I'm calling it there. See you later.